Good morning, all you fine folk out there. I hope you're having a wonderful new day and Happy New Year's to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful 2023. Now, without further ado, I want to continue with this series, and today's topic is arguments that the LGBTQ should not use, and in particularly the argument, but we do not harm anybody. I want to address this because that is a complete fallacy, and we will look at why I say it. The notion that homosexual behavior does not hurt anyone is very questionable. Need I mention the lives cut short by AIDS, or the debilitation caused by other sexually transmitted diseases and bodily traumas that are common amongst homosexuals? There are some young men whose lives have been nearly ruined by homosexual men preying on them. Yes, they consented in inverted commas. So by the homosexual activists' criteria, it was all okay? Not at all. Some of them end up on drugs to try and numb the emotional pain. Luckily, some of them has come out of it and are now married with kids, but it still left a black hole in their lives that they sorely regret. Suicide of homosexual men is a huge issue, largely because they live in a society that has lied to them about the true nature of homosexuality. For example, and I'm only going to give one example here, some people are curious and they indulge in homosexual sexual relationships, but they don't want to be homosexuals. But society has told them that you are born this way, so there is no way out for you, even if you want out. This destroys any hope of a different life. If you are convinced that you can't be a heterosexual or anything like that, and you are doomed with this homosexual nature and you have no way to escape it, I would also take my life. And then we wonder why the suicide rate is so high. Furthermore, the social acceptance of gay marriage following the radical homosexual agenda is resulting in the persecution of Christians. So you're harming Christians and others who do not accept this behavior. Again, I'm going to give you one example. There's a loving African husband and wife couple in the UK. They were fostering needy children. So they were caring for needy children. They had their long-term fostering of needy children terminated because they would not endorse the gay agenda. This has deprived children in need of loving parental care from having that care. Aren't you hurting and harming children because you persecute everyone that does not endorse your gender? Now those needy children are without foster care. What about children being born into homosexual arrangements by IVF, etc.? This denies a child the right to a mom and a dad. Sociological research is unanimous that children do by far the best with a mom and a dad. And what about the parents of a child caught up in homosexuality? What if the emotional pain they will suffer, often blaming themselves for something that they might have done to cause their kids' behavior? They put it on themselves. What did I do wrong as a parent? Where did I go wrong? They are hurt. So to say you're not harming anybody is very questionable. And they will never have the joy of grandchildren. Is homosexuality truly victimless? Homosexual behavior is destructive to a just and caring society. It's not just what people do in the privacy of their bedrooms, even if that was okay. Talking about societies, let's look at some statistics as to how destructive homosexuality truly is. Now, take into consideration you might not be in the same country as where the statistics are coming from, so please take it upon yourself to research your own country's statistics. And without further ado, let's have a look.
Homosexuals love to present themselves as they are just absolutely normal. They're just like everybody else. It's just two men or two women. But other than that, they've got a job, they've got a house, they got a car, they got a dog, they got all of these things. They're just like everybody else. It's just two men or two women instead of a man and a woman together. That is a total misrepresentation, and here's some facts to prove this. This group, Bell and Weinberg, A.P. Bell and M.S. Weinberg, produced a book entitled Homosexualities, a Study of Diversity Among Men and Women. And this was a study, of course, on homosexuality. They found that 43% of white male homosexuals had sex with 500 or more partners in their lifetime. And yet they want to present that homosexuality is just being as normal as a heterosexual couple. There was 28% of the white male homosexuals that had had over 1,000 sex partners in a lifetime. Now, even if you are going to sit there and argue that homosexuality is normal and acceptable, this is perversion by anybody's standards. For 43% of the homosexuals to have had 500 or more partners, just talk about this as being heterosexual. What if you looked at a couple and in a lifetime they had had 500 or more sexual partners? I guarantee you anybody's standard. I don't care if you're pagan. I don't care if you're non-Christian. Anybody looks at that and says, this is not good. This is not a healthy environment. There isn't a single judge or court system today that if you could prove that they had had 500 sexual partners, that you were raising a kid in that environment, there isn't a judge that would say that this is an acceptable norm. This is a perversion by anybody's standards. And yet they're trying to portray themselves as being normal. And yet nearly 50% of them have more than 500 partners in a lifetime. You know, I've got a graph here, and hopefully my television department will put this up. But this graph is showing, on the left-hand side is 0 up to 90%. And the first column is married females, and 85% of married females claim that they are sexually faithful to their mate in a marriage. Out of married males, it's 75.5% of married males claim that they are faithful to their mate. And then you come over here to the homosexuals, and there is 4.5% that claim that they are faithful to their mate. Now, if you're looking at that graph, can you see that there is something here that makes homosexuality in a class all by itself? This claim that they are faithful to their mate is not true. They are not normal by anybody's stretch of the imagination. It is a perverted lifestyle, and once you cross that threshold, it leads to promiscuity, it leads to unfaithfulness. There is no such thing as this is just a faithfully committed couple. That's not true. And even if you were to go on and read the rest of this study, I'm not going to go through all of the details, but I've read this study in detail. When they say that they are in a committed relationship, you know what they mean by committed relationship? Among the homosexuals who said that they were committed to their partner, they averaged 3 to 5 other sexual encounters per year. So what even they are defining as being committed is not committed at all. I guarantee you, among those that are married here, if they knew that their mate was having 3 to 4 or 5 sexual encounters per year, this would be totally different. So their definition, what they call commitment, is not true at all. Kind of a spin-off of all of this, you'll hear people say that they are pushing for these, I forgot the exact terminology of it, but they're pushing for these relationships to where they are some kind of a legally recognized deal, or either where they could be married. You could go to the state of Vermont, and Vermont has legalized homosexual marriage, and they estimate the percentage of homosexuals in Vermont based on the amount of percentage of homosexuals to the population. Now, the homosexual community will tell you that's anywhere from 10 to 12, 13% is what they claim. This statistic that I'm referring to was based on there only being 2 to 3% of homosexuality, which most people believe is more accurate. Homosexuals are claiming a larger influence than what they truly have. And if you were to take the homosexuals' claims that it was 10 to 12%, that would make these stats that I'm about to give you much, much worse. But let's use the conservative thing and say that there's only 2 to 3%. So you take the entire population of Vermont, and I don't have these figures in front of me, but I've read all of this. And if you take the population of Vermont, take 2 to 3%, and decide that those are the number of homosexuals, and then you look at the number of people that when marriage was okayed between two men or two women, and you look at the number who took advantage of it and actually went through and got married, there was less than 25% of the conservative numbers of homosexuals. If you were to take what the homosexuals claim, that they're 10 to 12 or 13%, well, then there was probably 1% or less of all homosexuals who take advantage of marriage when it's offered. And you know why? Because, again, I go back that 43% of all homosexuals have 500 or more partners in a lifetime. 28% of them have over 1,000. This is a smokescreen. They're wanting acceptability, they're wanting recognition, and they're wanting some of the maybe some of the benefits that go along with, you know, being a partner of somebody, and they're wanting some of the financial things, but this is a smokescreen that they are committed in their relationships. There may be somebody watching this who comes up and can cite some example of people that have been together for 20 or 30 something years, but I can guarantee you that is the exception rather than the rule. I've also got some other statistics here, if I can find them. Here is the length of current homosexual relationships based on a survey, and this comes from the Gay and Lesbian Consumer Online Census. It was conducted 2003 to 2004. So this is their own information. Somebody might dislike what I'm saying and saying you're twisting the information. This is the Gay and Lesbian Consumer Online Census. And the reason they were putting out these negative numbers is to show you how traumatized they are so that you'd feel sorry for them, but it makes a point. There is 11% of homosexual relationships that have been married for less than a year. There are 31% of all homosexual relationships have been married, or I don't even guess married is the right word. They've been in these relationships for 1 to 3 years. There is 29% that have been 4 to 7 years, and 14% have been 8 to 11 years, and then beyond 12 years it goes down to 6%. And for those that have been in a relationship for 20 years or more, there is a total of 5%. In contrast to this, here is a graph that is from the National Center for Health Statistics, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 2001. And there are 80% of heterosexual marriages that they have been married for 5 years or less. 66% have been married for 10 years or less. 57% have been married for 15 years or less. And 50% of all heterosexual marriages have been 20 years or more. Now contrast that with the homosexuals. There are 5% of homosexual relationships that have been together for 20 years or more. So another way of saying this is that homosexuality is 10 times as worse as being able to maintain a relationship. Or you could say that the chances of you maintaining a relationship are 10 times better if you go about it in the traditional way that God created rather than trying to do some perversion. This is not good on relationships. It is not normal by anybody's standard except their own. It is just not right. And look at this. Here's another statistic on partner violence. Among homosexuals, lesbians, there is an 11.4% spousal abuse rate among lesbians. Among married women, it's 0.26. In other words, 0.25% is what they claim spousal abuse. That means that among lesbians, that the spousal abuse rate for women is 44 times greater than it is among heterosexual couples. Now just stop for a moment. Think about all of the women that have been abused and how that there's these helplines and there's these things set up to help abused women. And certainly that's a valid thing. I'm not saying that spousal abuse is good, but I'm saying that among heterosexuals it is less than 1%, 0.25%, and among lesbians it's 11.4%, 44 times greater. Now, if people were going to really be honest, and if they were going to apply the truth across the board, they would be down on homosexuality and lesbianism because of the spousal abuse. There's people today that are coming out against marriage because of the spousal abuse that some women suffer. And yet it's a fraction compared to what goes on in a lesbian relationship. Look at this among homosexual men. There are 15.4% of homosexual men who claim spousal abuse. Among married men, it is 0.05. 0.05% of men claim that they have been abused by their wife. So that means that among homosexual males, you have a 300 times greater chance of spousal abuse than you do among heterosexuals. Now again, if anybody was wanting to be honest, and if they weren't prejudiced, and if they didn't have an agenda that they were trying to promote, if people were just looking at this, if you could somehow or another take homosexual off of this, and if you were to show that there is some type of behavior that is going to cause 300 times the abuse that happens to the normal population, I guarantee you the people would be on this like a chicken on a June bug. They would be out fighting this. They would be campaigning against this. We've got to stop this. And yet here's homosexuality that by every one of these measurements is damaging and it's not good for you, and yet people will be afraid to say anything against it. And if you do say something against it, then they come out against you as this is just your morality, it's your faith position, you have no reason to say this. They are trying to present themselves as absolutely normal in every stretch of the way, except it's just 2 men or 2 women. That's untrue. The statistics don't bear this out. It's just untrue is all that you can say about it. It's a lie. And they are not accurately representing things. Look at this. It says, a new study in the United Kingdom has revealed that homosexuals are about 50% more likely to suffer from depression and engage in substance abuse than the rest of the population, reports health24.com. Now again, if you were to be honest and not biased, if you didn't have a prejudice and some agenda that you were trying to promote, if you found something that caused people to have 50% more depression and substance abuse than the average population, I guarantee you the government would be on this. They would be trying to stop it. They would be outlawing it. They would be promoting this. But you know what? Here it is, homosexuality. And we've got the President of the United States saying that he is trying to get all Americans to accept and to embrace homosexuality, saying that we need to get rid of our outdated ideas and we need to all embrace this. This is a detrimental lifestyle. It is not good. It's destructive. It says, after analyzing 25 earlier studies on sexual orientation and mental health, researchers in a study published in the medical journal BMC Psychiatry also found that the risk of suicide jumped over 200% if an individual had engaged in homosexual lifestyle. Now stop and think about that. Boy, again, if we just took the name homosexual off of this, and if you could find something in our society that caused over twice as many suicides among this certain group of people than any other group of people in our society, I guarantee you they would be up in arms, they would be trying to pass legislation, they'd be doing all of this. But because it's homosexuality that causes you to have twice the risk of suicide, then they don't say anything about it. And they promote something that is going to increase, double their likelihood of suicide, increase their possibility of depression 50%, and substance abuse. That's going to cause all of these problems. And this is just getting a pass because nobody wants to be politically incorrect, nobody wants to be a hate monger. I tell you, I'm saying these things because I love people. I'm telling you that homosexuality is not only wrong from a scriptural standpoint because God said it was wrong. The reason God said it was wrong is because He loves you. And God doesn't want you destroying your life. God doesn't want you to live with the guilt and the condemnation and the sexually transmitted diseases and the spousal abuse and the depression and the drug abuse and the suicide. God loves you. It's a destructive lifestyle. And those are just the facts, and those are only some of the facts.
Please, as I said, do your own research, check your own country's statistics and most recent ones. I'm quite sure that a lot more can be said on this topic, but I thank you for watching, and I will be back with the next series on what the LGBTQ should not use as an argument against Christianity. Thank you for watching.